your time most effectively over the next couple of months. And today it's about co-op. A project, we are built on two really wonderful pillars. One of them is achieving academic results. So, that's about designing programs that help our students smash the HSC. But the other piece, and this piece is what today is really about, it's about getting project students to fall in love with the work that they do. It's about nurturing that love that students have for the work that they do, because we believe that students do their best work when they love the work that they do. And today what we have is we have ex-project students, 4 of them coming back and kind of giving back to the community, reflecting on how they got into their co-ops, how they got into their cadetships, and sharing that with project students and their friends to kind of help bridge that gap between high school and the outside world. I think that co-ops and cadetships do a really wonderful job with that. We kind of like go from, sitting examinations in high school to sitting examinations in university. But what a cadetship does and what a co-op does is that it puts you in touch with real companies, usually large ones, and gets you to do actual real work from the very beginning. What you end up with at the end of your degree is not only just a degree and your marks and all that subject and that content, but you end up with real life experience and something massive on your resume to actually show your next employer. So you stand out from the crowd and you look much more wonderful in front of your next employer. Now, how are we going to do this today? So first of all, I'd like to give a huge welcome to our 4 panelists. We have Victor, Bhagavathi, Andrew, and Guy. Thank you so much for joining us here today. These are ex-project students who've kind of come back to share their perspectives on and their experiences on their application process and how that might be able to help out you guys as well. The schedule of today. Now, we're going to tackle this in 4 different sections. Section 1, we're going to attack 3 big ticket items first. We're going to talk about preparation, so how to stand out from the crowd and how to build up your story. Number 2, how to write a great application. And number 3, how to smash your interview. So that's section 1. Victor's going to take us through that for co-op. Bhagavathi is going to take us through that for cadetships. And then we're going to move on into section 2. Section 2, we're going to get a really quick intro from each of the 4 panelists, and they're going to share their favorite part of co-op as well. We're going to keep it really quick because we need to move into section 3, which is when we dig into more details. Now, we're going to go through all the questions that the audience had pre-submitted to us. There's a lot of advice here, a lot of questions we want to try and go through, and it's all specific to what you've already asked. So that's the plan with section number 3. And section number 4, we're going to open up the floor, go through some open Q&A, and you guys can type in your questions through the Zoom chat and we'll go through it. So that's the plan for today. And let's actually jump straight into it. I might introduce Victor. Hello, Victor. Victor, would you be able to give us an overview of co-op and your tips for it?
Sure. So I'm just going to share my screen. So I put together some short slides to walk through things. So can everyone see this? Stu, are we on the slides?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, okay, great. Cool. So today I'm going to talk briefly about how to apply to the programs. I won't talk too much about the exact process because you can find that online, but instead I'll focus on some tips and tricks as you go through the entire application process from preparing all the way to the interview. So just to kick off, my name is Victor. I graduated from Baulkham Hills High School in 2015. And I do think there are some Baulkers joining, so good on you for coming here. And I was also a Project Academy student. And since I've graduated, I've still been good friends with Suru for many years. So that's why he's invited me to give this talk. So I was actually a pretty average student. My grades weren't incredible. I was actually a bit below average, to be honest, at Baulkham Hills High School. But what I did have was some interesting co-curricular involvements. And also I was quite clear on what I wanted to study at university. And that's what enabled me to actually get 3 co-op scholarship offers. So I got 2 from UNSW, 1 in Commerce Information Systems, 1 in Business Information Systems, and 1 at UTS in IT, in Information Technology. So ultimately, I decided to choose the UNSW Commerce Information Systems Scholarship, but all 3 of them are great. So now, there are 3 main universities that offer the co-op programs. The first one's UNSW, then there's UTS and Macquarie University. So at UNSW, the scholarship is over 4 years. So typically it's a 3-year degree that you do, but it adds an extra year because you actually do 3 work placements, which total 18 months. And you do these at 3 different companies. So what you get is the opportunity to go and try out 3 different workplaces, experience the different environments, experience a bit of different work, and experience different companies. And UNSW offers these programs across business, technology, and science. They offer quite a few programs, I think around 15, almost 20 programs. Although with UNSW, they do offer less spots, but some programs only have 3 spots. So you might be competing with a few hundred people just for those 3 spots. In terms of UTS, UTS has also been around for a long time, the co-op program. It's over 3 years, so it is slightly shorter. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because you do get to graduate earlier. And during those 3 years, you get 2 placements, 6 months each at 2 different companies. UTS only offers it though for IT and accounting, so 2 programs. And Macquarie University, quite similar in terms of what they give you to UNSW. Over 4 years, you get around $19,000 a year, totaling almost $80,000 over the 4 years. You get 3 placements and they offer it for actuarial studies and accounting. So Macquarie University is quite new. They didn't exist when I applied for the co-op programs. Only UTS and UNSW existed back then. So part 1, and this is the part you should never underestimate. Preparation is critical. Ideally, you need years to apply for it, but I know that's not possible in most cases, but a few months is the absolute minimum because you need to figure out firstly what you want to study and then accumulate the relevant experiences to actually apply for it. The first thing I would do would be to figure out what you're interested in, discover your interests. You need to have an idea of what programs interest you. So if UNSW has so many different programs across engineering, sciences, business, finance, accounting, which one are you actually interested in? Because you can't apply to every single one. So you need to know what you're applying for and why you're applying for it. And you need to communicate that throughout your application process moving ahead. And one tip I'm going to give you is don't apply to all 3 options because you actually do get 3. I think back in our time, we got 4 options, but instead focus on 1 or 2 and gear your entire application. So your application will look a bit like this. After you finish, it's 2 pages long. Gear your entire application towards those 1 or 2 programs. It shows focus and it shows you know what you want, which is critical. The second thing is understand yourself. To be able to sell yourself, you need to know for yourself what makes you unique. What makes you passionate about the program that you're interested in, and ultimately why you committed to it. Because the co-op office doesn't want you to get in and drop out and decide to do something else. To be honest, I actually ended up dropping out of the program to pursue something else. And one of the things you really want to make clear to the co-op office is you're not going to do that. And the third thing is you need to accumulate relevant experiences. So academics definitely isn't enough. The cutoff for UNSW is around 96 as the ATAR. For UTS is a bit more variable. I believe it's around 90, although I've heard they've taken some people with high ATARs. And thousands of people get these ATARs, right? So what you really need is some experiences to differentiate yourself. And it takes time. The reason why I say it takes months or takes years to prepare is you need to align your experiences towards the program you're applying for and talk about it in your application. So part 1, preparation is super important. Don't underestimate it. So part 2 is the application process. What I would do here is put yourselves in the shoes of the co-op office and imagine you have to filter through thousands of applications. How do you do that? There are 2 main things. The first thing is don't get cut out as they filter the applications. Don't give them any excuse to delete you from the process. So make sure you write really well, don't have any grammar mistakes, don't have spelling mistakes, spend time on the application. But at the same time, you also want to stand out as well. So you think about some of those preparation items I talked about. What makes you stand out in their eyes? And there are 3 main tips I will share here. The first thing is start early. It takes a long time. I remember I found out about the co-op program in year 11. My friend and I, we started preparing towards the end of year 11. We read about what it required and started working towards it. And I started writing my application months in advance. It's not a quick application. It looks like it's 2 pages, but you also need references. You need someone from school to refer you, someone from outside of school as well to write your reference. So it does take a lot of time. Don't leave it for the last minute. Second thing is writing well is really hard. So it's actually quite different to HSC English, where you talk about the technique and effect and all that. You can be all fluffy. In the real world of work, you want to be clear, you want to be succinct, and get straight to the point. So don't spend time cutting around corners and just making very long responses. And I'd say at least 10 hours is required to write an application. For me, I think I probably spent 20 to 30 hours doing my application, writing it, getting feedback, editing it, scrapping out entire sections and rewriting again. And finally, triple check you're answering the question. So each one of these questions here, whether it's about leadership or about problem solving abilities, they all answer a criteria. And if you're not answering the question, you get 0 points for that section. So you're not likely to move through. So make sure you're triple checking answering the question. And finally, use experience as well. I wouldn't use the same experience for too many questions. Try and diversify your experiences and make sure you link every experience you talk about back to the question. Don't show up how cool you are if it's not relevant. Only focus on being relevant to the question and meeting their criteria. Finally, show, don't tell. You've probably been told this many, many times, but let me give you an example. I can say I'm a great leader, or I can say I started a not-for-profit that's helped 600 high school students build their own startups and social ventures. Along the way, I've been able to get these sponsors and also have some incredible people join me on the journey. And that is showing that you're actually a good leader. You have the leadership capabilities. So don't just tell them, but show them through your experiences. Now, if you've gotten through the application process, you're up to the interview stage. And at this stage, you really demonstrate your capabilities already. So what you need to focus on is showing some confidence and showing some commitment to the program. You'll be interviewed by one representative from the university, and that's generally a professor. And you'll also be interviewed by one person from a sponsor company, so one of the sponsors of the program. What I would do here is, again, prepare thoroughly. I would get a piece of paper, look through, write down the criteria, and come up with maybe 5 or 10 questions for every single dot point, every single criteria. And think about your response for those questions. You don't have to memorize a response. I would dot point everything out. And that means at least you know what to say if they happen to ask that question. The second thing is, as a high school student, you probably don't have a lot of interview experience. So you don't know how you come off during the interview. So what I would do in this case would be practice answering questions in front of the mirror. So you can see your body language. How do you look? What type of signals are you giving off with your body? So that's quite important as well. And then, oh, it jumped. There we go. And then finally, set up mock interviews with your friends. So me and my friend, we went to the library a couple of days before the interview, and we just interviewed each other and gave feedback. That's the best way to simulate a real interview. Second thing is the 3 C's, I call it. Capability. Do you have the capability to be a co-op scholar? Secondly is the confidence. You're confident enough to actually go and work when you're still a young university student. And finally, commitment. Are you committed to the program? Just make sure in the interview you come off as confident, make sure you dress well, rest well, arrive early so that you're ready to go. And capabilities should come through the application already. You just need to be able to regurgitate a bit of what you put in there in a very clear and confident manner. And finally, be authentic, be ready to sell yourself, but don't lie. You want to strike the right balance, because if you come off as overly confident or you try and pretend to be overly confident, it does come off as arrogant, and they don't want to put someone arrogant into the workplace. You need to show that you're open-minded, but you're also confident and assertive at the same time, but you're open to learning and you don't know everything yet. And that's totally fine, because you're a high school student. And towards the end of the interview, one tip is to prepare some genuine questions for them as well. At the end of almost every interview, they'll give you the chance to ask them some questions. And this is one way to really bring the interview home. Ask them questions that you're genuinely curious about. For example, what led you to go down this career path as a programmer, or go down this career path as a consultant? And what do you like about it? What you don't like about it? Asking some of those questions that are directly relevant to them and to the program you're applying for really drives this home and shows that you're interested in it. To summarize, first thing is prepare. Don't ever underestimate it. Spend a lot of time preparing. I spent months. Application, again, spend a lot of time, write well, make sure your application is read by other people, get feedback, rewrite it, use your experiences really well. And finally, the interview, prepare thoroughly again, be confident, be committed to the program, and just be yourself. Thank you.
Cool.
I'll pass back to Sir.
Thank you, Victor. Now there was a lot of stuff there. For everyone who's watching, don't worry, all this stuff is being recorded, so you will get a link at the end of all this, so you can replay this, you can stop and start all of the stuff that Victor just went through, so you can kind of work through your application step by step. So don't worry about that. Just try and keep up in these 90 minutes with us, and then afterwards we'll talk about how to get you that link. Now, let's go on to cadetships. Bhagavathi, would you like to share your experiences and your tips about cadetship? So Victor just spoke about co-op. Now this is going to be cadetships. Bhagavathi, over to you.
Yeah. Actually, Victor went through it very well. Like, I think the essence is the same for co-ops and cadetships because it's all the same process. It's like preparation, application, and then the interview. I just think for cadetships, they want more of commitment and they're looking for like a more suited person for their company, because for co-ops, they're looking for people suited for different companies because you intern at different places. For cadetships, you're in the same company throughout the degree. So I just need a slide, just a second, I'll just share my screen.
So before we jump into that, let me just linger a little bit on that point, because I think that was one of the questions that some of the audience asked as well, the difference between a co-op and a cadetship. So, you know, when you go through a co-op, you actually go through kind of almost industry placement with a bunch of different companies over the course of your 4 or 5 years of uni, whereas with a cadetship, you're actually working part-time or full-time with a single company through the entire thing. And you're actually considered to be, in some ways, a semi-permanent part of that team over those 4 or 5 years. Is that true?
Well, at least it differs for different cadetships, because I applied for both. I applied for the UBS cadetship and also applied for the BDO cadetship. And at the end, I went with the BDO cadetship because it offered a permanent role, which meant that I actually surpassed the graduate entry role itself. So after my cadetship, I get a permanent role.
Right.
Like there's no in between, like it's just a straight transition. Right. Whereas for UBS, they said that after my cadetship of 4 years, that ends there. And I need to apply again for the graduate role. And then I need to apply again for a permanent role.
Right.
So it depends and it differs with every cadetship. So it's better to ask that upfront in the interview or like in any of the stage before you make a decision at the end.
Right. But the commitment for a cadetship during your 4 or 5 years of uni is significantly higher. Is that true than a co-op, or is it similar?
Well, for a cadetship, I work full-time. So I'm working 5 days a week and I only go for my tutorials at uni. Right. So I actually have to catch up with my lectures later and I do part-time uni. So everyone else does 3 units, 3 subjects a semester at UNSW, but I only do 2 because I do full-time work. So my uni is actually extended by a year at the end.
Right. Understood. Cool. Let's jump into your presentation. Let's go through cadetships.
Yeah. So cadetships.
Cool. I can see that.
Yeah. So I'm Bhagavathi. I graduated from Chatsworth High School last year, and I got a cadetship at BDO, and I'm working as an assistant auditor at BDO right now. So what are they in essence? It's just you work full-time at a firm and you do part-time university. And then with the full-time work, you get your salary, you get your superannuation, and you get all the other benefits. And also like they pay for your textbooks and things like that. So I'm just going to go through my application process because Victor went through all the tips and tricks and everything you need to know. And because they're usually different for every company, I just thought that it would be better for me to talk through my application process itself. So here you can see that from my application till my individual interview, it was all in less than a month. So it went very fast, and they actually take the applications on an individual basis. So I actually did my video interview before the application round was over.
Right.
So like from the day you submit your application, you actually get back a result before even the end of the application date. So it's not only starting early, but it's like if you feel confident that that's the application you want to give through, just send it through, and then you might get a response before even the application round's over. So my preparation, I think the first thing will be to just join extracurriculars as much as you can. Things like position at schools, hobbies, and so on. And then flush out your resume to be concise, but packs everything needed. That's because in the next step in the application process, so the co-op process actually has a lot of different questions, so you can actually reflect who you are and like showcase who you are. But for the application process for the BDO cadetship, I only got one question to answer. That was whether I wanted to pursue my chartered accountancy after my undergraduate degree, and I had to submit my resume. So I had to show myself through my resume, and there was nothing else I could show the company who I am, because there were no other questions, nothing. It was just, do you want to do your CA after like undergraduate degree? And show us your resume. So make sure that your resume really showcases who you are, because that's the only way that the company is going to know who you are and if they want to even take you in for the next round. And then the next round, this is actually a very tricky one for me because it was the first time I ever did a video interview. And I had not even done many interviews at that stage because I was in between of my trials and my trials just got over. And a video interview, it was nerve-wracking, but I realized that it was just as important and formal as a face-to-face interview. Although there was no one else at the other end, and it was just you speaking to yourself with the timer. But make sure to research well about the role and the company, because they do want to know that you are interested in the company and you actually want to pursue a career there. And because it's a video interview, they can go back and check if you like went past or like you were searching something up, and if you're just giving a textbook answer. So be truthful and make good use of the time. You can see the timer tick down. So just like keep that in mind. Don't rush yourself. Take your time, and like you can actually stop answering if you feel like you've done answering. Don't just keep on talking just to fill up the time. Because if you've answered, go to the next one. Then the written assessment. So yeah, there were 5 steps overall. And then the written assessment, I actually got the written assessment while I was at school. So we actually get a time period. We get a question, we get a time period. We need to answer it and send it back to them within that time frame. And I got that while I was at school. So I was in my economics class and I was like, hey, sir, I have my written assessment. Can I just like go outside and do it? And then I actually had to like leave the class, and I was just sitting outside like typing up my answer while there was an actual class going on. And this is like right after my trials, and we just got our papers back or something. And I was like, yeah, I will come back and I'll see my answer. I'll see my marks after I do this, because I don't want to get my marks if it was bad or something. I don't want to like make that affect my written assessment. So just make sure like you do convey to your teachers and everything that if you are having something that's related to a cadetship or a scholarship happening, because they are very friendly and they do want you to get it. So they will like make all the arrangements needed. But yeah, be mindful of the time limit, because there's no one telling you that your time is up or anything, because they want the answer back within that time period, because it's an email that you send through and from. So make sure that you do it within the time frame. And because it's like your own work, don't just give a textbook answer or like just copy paste some answer from like the web, because that's not who you are, and they will find it out, because it's the same question that they're giving so many different applicants. If you all have the same answer, it's very clear that you copy pasted it from somewhere. So make sure that you're showing who you are and your true answer to that question. Because I remember my question was something like, what would I want to like achieve in my first 6 months at the firm? And I can't just be like, oh yeah, I want to like get to the next role or anything. So I had to be true to myself and just say that I want to improve in these 3 areas. And that reflected what I aimed and why I was applying for this role. And then just like how you're answering an HSC question, make sure you're answering that question. Don't just talk totally different things to what they asked for, because that's not what they want. And then after that, you get called to an assessment center, which is where your group activity and your individual interview takes place. It's actually the same. I went for the assessment center for the UTS BX Co-op as well. So it was almost similar. So for the group activity, the only difference was for this cadetship is actually open for anyone in their HSC year or in their first year of uni. So in my group activity, we were 4 uni students, and I was the only high school student in that group. So make sure you have an open mind, you listen to everyone, and I think it's just showing that you can play well in a team and you have your own original ideas. You don't always have to lead, but just make sure that you are heard in that group. And then, yeah, being the only high school student, don't like in that group of uni students, don't feel like you know less. Like everyone's ideas are worth the same. So just talk if you have any ideas to say, because I remember our group activity was we got given a question and we had to find out solutions for that. I did apply for audit, so mine would be a different type of group activity against like someone else who's applying for corporate tax or something different. So the group activity, I would say, is just making sure that you are heard and you can play well in a team. And then I had my individual interview. This was with two of the managers and the senior managers from video audit. And they actually refer back to your resume, your written application, and your video interview. I remember they had my resume printed out and they had like highlighted things that they wanted to talk about, and also my written application. And they were like, yeah, so we want to talk about these things. So if you just wrote things that weren't actually necessarily you in your resume or your written assessment, then they would catch you off in this individual interview, because they will go back and they will talk about all of that in this stage. And therefore you have to answer honestly, because if they catch that you're lying on something, they can just keep on asking questions and just make it worse for you. So make sure that you're being truthful and honest, because at the end, they're just trying to figure out if you are fit for the role and their company. Because if not, you'll probably leave because you don't feel like you want that job or you are worth for that job. Because they want something good that you should want that job, and then the job should be fit for you. And it's not always the same. So what happens is the two people who interviewed me, they were really nice, and they just made sure that I actually had a fire and a passion for this job, because audit is something that I never knew about until I saw that there was a video audit. And so they didn't expect me to know anything about audit. They just wanted to know that I'd researched something about audit and I knew what it was, and I had questions and I wanted to learn more. And that's all they want from you. They just want to make sure that you actually want to learn and you actually want to do well in that job. So just be yourself, I think, and be honest. I think those are the two main things in an interview, and research about the job and the company. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to have to done that thing before. You just need to be ready to learn. And then I think that's the entire process, like the entire main points to take from that entire process. And then I also applied for the UBS Cadetship. So the UBS Cadetship process was different. So I had my application and I had an aptitude test, which is mainly like different. They show you like things and they're like, hey, what comes next in this? Or they give you like situations and you need to like respond how you would respond to that. That was also a very different experience. It was good. But, and then I had 3 interviews. So I went for the first interview and then my second interview. But before I could get to the third interview, I'd already accepted my BDO offer. But so it just shows how all the application processes are different for every cadetship. So don't think that it's a one-size-fits-all kind of process for all 3 of them, or for all of the cadetships actually. So if you have any questions about any of the cadetships, feel free to ask me and I should be able to help.
Very cool.
So yeah.
Let's move into the next phase of what we want to cover here. So was that everything that you wanted to cover be on your end? Was that the full presentation on your end?
Yeah, you guys can add on anything about co-ops. I don't really know anything.
Very cool, very cool. So what I thought it would be good to do now is to actually hear about the experiences kind of from a high level from all 4 of you. Okay, so I'm talking about a really quick intro, you know, what degree you're doing, what company you're doing a cadetship or a co-op with, and maybe your favorite thing about co-op so far, you know. So maybe we'll start with Guy. We haven't heard from you just yet. So Guy, did you want to give us a quick intro?
Hi, my name's Guy. Full name Guy Segev. I just finished a degree in computer science. So I was doing the computer science co-op at UNSW. Did I receive any other scholarships? I did receive, well, I did get an offer for the UTS BIT one, although I just decided that I wanted to go something more technical, get a lot more physical skills sorted out. And I think the best part of the co-op program for me would be in a few parts. The first bit would be the people. Honestly, probably the best thing for me. You meet some incredible people who are not just really smart, but really diverse as well. I'm still friends with, and I'm still in contact with a lot of my co-op cohort. I think that's honestly something that's quite unique. You know, you can get work offers, you can get internships from other means, you can find your own, but that strong network of really talented, really interesting, really nice people is something that's really hard to find. I think that's really one of the big values of co-op and stuff like that. So there are more, but we can discuss them later.
Yeah.
So I'm glad.
Yeah, cool. Andrew, Mr. Snow, is he still with us?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Tell us about your degree, which company you're doing a cadetship or a co-op with, and your favorite part.
Yep. So my name's Andrew Snow. I did an information systems degree at UNSW, and I received the UNSW Information Systems Co-op as well as the UTS BIT, which is pretty much the same degree, just from UTS. And I think the best part about the whole experience was actually, like I said, the people you meet. And what I want to expand on it is more like the cohort. So the other people who go through this unique university experience with you, because uni isn't like high school where you have the same people in every class. In fact, you'll meet people that you do one subject with and never see them ever again. So it's actually pretty cool to have this group of people who are going through this uni experience that you can rely and share these, I guess, non-traditional university experience with, and they'll be your friends for life. So I think that was, I guess, the best part of co-op for me.
Yeah, cool. Victor and Bhagavathi, you guys have already spoken quite a bit about your experiences, but maybe very quickly, Victor, what's probably your favorite part about co-op, especially if it's something that the other two have not mentioned yet?
I was going to say people, because you really do meet incredible people.
Right.
I'd say mentors as well. So surprisingly, my co-op mentor, so every co-op actually gets a mentor. My co-op mentor was a venture capitalist based in the US. And when I actually went on exchange to the US, I did an exchange semester at Cornell. I caught up with him and he even showed me around San Francisco, which was just incredible. So he's a co-op from, I think, 10 years ago. And now he's investing in really interesting startups around the world. So mentors, which is also people, I guess.
Yeah, very cool. Bhagavathi, what's been your favorite part of cadetship so far? Now, have you already had you're a first year university student. Have you already had a bit of experience in the workplace yet, or that's still to come?
Okay, so I started my cadetship in March. So how it works is you actually study cadetship right after you study uni. So my uni started halfway through Feb, so I started my cadetship in March. And then COVID struck, so I went for a month at workplace. So I went to BDO for a month, and then we all got sent to work from home. So I've been working from home, and then right now I'm on my break. And then we'll get back to working and training when we're back in the workplace. But I think we're actually 5 cadets. We have 5 audit cadets who are straight out of high school. So it's like, as everyone else said, it's very nice to know that there are people like with you. So we're all the same age, and then we're all the youngest in the workplace. And it's just good to know that like there are really good people that you can always like lean on, because it's not everyone who does a full-time job and then also does uni at the same time. So to have someone who's going through the same thing, and there are also other cadets who are in their second year or third year, and you can always go to them for any like advice on like what course to do or what courses to do together, because you don't want to do 2 hard courses and work at the same time during a busy season. So there are all these things that you can talk to other cadets who have already done their first year, their second year. So it's a very supportive community at the workplace itself, with all the other trainings that you're going to get. So as a whole, you do miss out on things on one end, but you're gaining a lot of other things on the other side.
Very cool. All right, so the next section, we're actually going to jump into a bunch of the questions that you guys have already asked, which goes into lots of little bits of detail on different parts of co-op and cadetship, to give a really quick 60-second summary on some of the stuff we've already gone through. So, Victor and Bhagavathi both spoke about their experience, gave tips on how to apply effectively. So after this whole thing's done, I'll share a link to the video. All of you in the audience should absolutely replay that section of it, write some notes down so you know exactly how you want to tackle the application process and how to prepare for the interview itself. A couple of things to look out for in terms of whether this thing is the right thing for you. There is kind of an element of, there's a huge element of work, obviously. So it's about juggling university and and the cadetship or the co-op, but ultimately it's about whether you're willing to put in that time and effort to actually get those experiences along the way so that you have that on your resume at the end of it all. Let's jump into these questions, and I think there'll be kind of further insights that kind of we get from that. I'm going to share my screen here because we have a, if I can get this thing up, bear with me. I'm having difficulty with that. That's okay. So instead what I'll do is I'll actually just go through the questions. I'll actually speak them out. So I've got the list here. And what I'll do is I'll actually get one of you to fire out the answer for us. So first question, and I think anyone can answer this one. Are these applications through the uni or by UAC?
I can answer that. For co-op, it's through the university. So each university has its own application portal. So you do need to register for it in advance and then upload all your questions into the portal. In terms of UAC, you just need to preference them very high up. If it was me, I'd preference the co-ops first. And if I don't get them, it would jump to the other degrees that I applied for.
Right, very cool. Next question,
then,
how long does, yes, go on, sorry.
No, sorry, I was just saying for cadetships, we actually applied through the company. So it's neither UAC nor uni.
Right.
So yeah, you should actually check their websites for the actual company and their job boards. And for UBS, it's actually through a third party. So it's through Professional Cadetships Australia.
Right. Okay.
So
cool.
yeah.
Very cool. So with cadetship, it's actually through the company itself.
Yeah.
Next question. How long does co-op go for? Does it only last until you complete your undergraduate degree, or does it go beyond that? Guy, do you have any thoughts about that?
I think I'd be a good person to answer that, given that I've finished my co-op degree all the way.
Sure.
Yeah, so the way that co-op works is that, at least with UNSW with their program, is you have 3 different internships, and you can essentially look at it as a few different sections. You have your co-op until your first placement, your second placement, and your third placement. And so essentially the way that co-op works is you get your money, and then you basically have to count it as you get your money, and that money is yours once you finish that placement. So if you do take your money, do your placement, and then finish it, and then quit, you have to pay back nothing. However, if you do that first placement and then keep going and quit, then you have to pay all the money back that you've received since that first placement. So I know that, say, Victor, when he dropped out, I think you did about halfway between placements.
Yeah.
And so
pay
then
everything back.
Yeah. And then actually get a stage where I had this for my last term of university. I had finished all my placements, and I just had a last semester where I just kept receiving payments and I wasn't doing any placements. So how long does it go for? It goes throughout your entire degree, although technically if you do leave it at certain points, you can be shortening it, although I generally, in some cases, wouldn't recommend that.
Cool. And when are the deadlines for the scholarships? Victor, any thoughts?
I think for all the co-ops, they're in September. So UNSW, UTS, and Macquarie. And for cadetships, Bhagavathi can probably answer.
They actually differ with the cadetship. So I'm pretty sure the UBS one just finished. So it was 20th May or 22nd May, one of them. And then I'm pretty sure BDO is not anytime soon. It's like August. So and then I haven't checked a lot of other ones as well. So there are many more cadetships than just these 2, and they all differ at different times. So keep a check on each of the different cadetships, and you should know when it ends.
Okay, very cool. Now I think I have the sharing working. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, we're good to go. All right, next question. Considering the COVID-19 situation, what are some things we can do in the 4 months from now to give ourselves the best shot at these scholarships and cadetships? Guy?
Yeah. So unfortunately, we are in a pretty unprecedented situation. A lot of you guys are stuck at home, and there's not as many extracurriculars that you can be doing. That's just sort of an unfortunate part of that. That being said, if you have all your extracurriculars down, I'd really focus on just getting that, getting your application looking really nice and schmick. And the benefit of that is also a lot of these questions are very similar. So I actually did my UTS application and just adapted it for the UNSW one, because it's a lot of the same information, a lot of the stuff you've written down. will be kind of applicable to both. So I would, oh, question's gone.
Sorry,
I would either sort of work on that stuff. If you don't have that many extracurriculars, now is actually a really, really good time potentially to add some in or add some things down, and you can say, hey, literally dealt with a pandemic event and then did all these cool things. So, I've been getting quite bored at home, and I sort of made my little startup just on the side to do sort of things. If you have any like programming skills, any business skills, anything, even if you want to start a study group digitally, that sort of stuff can be really useful to show off that, hey, you can deal with adversity. You're not someone just will cop a scenario. So it's a bit of a tricky scenario right now, but I would either make sure you can get your application really nice, or try and find some really unique ways you've dealt with this. And I think that'd be a really good entry to your application to show how you dealt with the COVID scenario.
Yeah, very cool. For those of us who didn't do many extracurricular activities, how do you work around this in the application process? Now, this is actually a really interesting question, because I feel like over the past, half an hour or so, some of the examples that we've dropped have been big ones. We talked about people doing their own startups, or they're not-for-profits and this and that. And I know, with the panel that we have here, some of us literally did that when we were in high school. We started a not-for-profit, or we did a startup, like we did that, and we can talk about that. That's all well and good. But we've only got a bunch of months left before this whole thing begins. So for those of us who didn't do many extracurriculars, how do you work around this application process? Andrew?
Yeah, so this is actually a really good question. And I think I just want to point out that it actually doesn't matter what your extracurricular is, as long as you can align it to answering the question. So I was just reading my UNSW Co-op application, and I just realized that I didn't really put school captain or any of those traditional extracurriculars. Actually, one of my examples was talking about a game called Minecraft. And pretty much all I was talking about was how I learned, I was interested in technology by making Minecraft mods. And the way that I learned Minecraft modding was from YouTube tutorials. And then that was just my whole example out of just me playing games that I actually answered this question. So I think you can really just answer anything as long as it links to the question and illustrates that because of this experience, I'm interested in technology. So that was the sort of angle I was pushing. I want to further a career in technology. And because I'm interested not through school, but through, tinkering around on YouTube, I've actually found this passion in technology. So you can actually, I think you can just use anything as long as you align it right to the question.
Yeah, very cool. Next question. What extracurricular activities did you include in your application? It's a free-for-all, so anyone who wants to have a go, maybe something that is something that could be a bit relatable for the audience as well, something that is not too extraordinary in some ways.
Well, I think I can say that I wrote that I was working at McDonald's. So so I was like, yeah, I've been working at McDonald's throughout my HSC, and I got the person of the year for customer service and teamwork. So that's something big, even though it was not really. But yeah, I mean, it's just talking about small things and making them showcasing them as one thing that you did. And I said that, I became the co-trainer, and then I trained these many people, learned front and back. So I think it's just taking everything and then just presenting it well as an extracurricular activity.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really important point. So I mean, what Bhagavathi just spoke about is something probably that a lot of audience members have. Maybe you have worked at a place before, maybe you've done good work there, and maybe you have been, promoted to some kind of team leader position of any kind. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the story is. It's a question of, are you able to talk about that in a way that displays leadership, or displays communication, or displays organization, displays ambition, displays something. So I think it's really a matter of really digging deep into your history and trying to figure out what those things mean and how to speak about them properly, but also honestly, obviously. But so you need to speak about them honestly, but you can probably speak about them in a way that showcases that skill set. Are there any other extracurricular activities that any other panelists want to flag at this stage?
I actually noticed I was looking through my application too, and I noticed I used to sell pastries at school. I would recommend doing right now. I was in the school band and stuff, and I had to raise money, and most people were selling chocolates, and I basically learned how to make these little pastry scrolls so I could make more money with it.
Right.
Which is like it's a small thing. I think the big thing with all of these extracurriculars is not just like a box ticking exercise of like, oh, this person was school captain or SRC or did band or did this. I think a big thing that they're looking for is, these are indicators of who you are as a person. So if you like even Andrew talked about his Minecraft stuff. So really, even something as simple as selling pastries, or even if you sold chocolates at school, to raise money for some kind of fundraiser, discuss how you did that. Did you, have to find specific ways of finding customers? Did you have to learn sales skills? Did you have to learn how to do basic accounting or having change available? They really want to be able to see, is this someone who can do whatever activity it is to a high capacity, and can they do problem solving and be good leaders in whatever they do, be it Minecraft, selling chocolates, or work?
Yeah, very cool. Next question. How did co-op and cadetship differ from each other, and how did these differ from regular scholarships? Which is best and why? So we kind of touched on this before, so there's a bit of background information out there already. But can we answer this very directly, just for anyone who might have jumped on board late or didn't quite understand our answer to it from previously? Maybe Bhagavathi can share her thoughts. The difference between co-op and cadetship very clearly.
Yeah, so I mean, if I talk about co-ops and it's a bit off, please jump in. But I'm pretty sure a cadetship is a full-time job. So you work 8 to 5, or you work a full-time job basically. And then for co-ops, you actually get 2 to 3 placements of 6 months each at different companies. So for a cadetship, you're working in the same company with a chance of rotating around roles, but in the same company.
Right.
But then for co-ops, you're able to test the waters of different companies and roles. That's in the same range, I think.
Yeah.
And then for a cadetship, because you're doing a full-time job, you get a salary, you get super, and you get and you have to pay your income tax, and then you have everything else. You get payments for textbooks and all of that. But then for co-ops, you get a stipend throughout the degree. So
right.
even when you're not doing the placement, you still get the stipend.
Right. Okay.
And then for co-ops, it's full-time university, as in you either go to university or you're in a placement.
Right.
But not at the same time, I think. And then for cadetships, you're actually doing both at the same time. So you're having a full-time job and you're doing uni on top of the full-time job.
Right. Okay. Is there a particular reason that you chose, were you more keen on a cadetship than a co-op? And I would probably ask that question vice versa to some of the other panelists as well, but you can go first. Is there a particular reason that, were you more keen on one over the other?
Well, I actually applied for the UTS BIAC co-op and I applied for 2 of the cadetships.
Okay.
So how I went with it was for a cadetship, it was more of a long-term thing that I saw, because I did do accounting as, I did a TVET course. So I did a TAFE accounting course. I got a certificate 3 while I was in high school.
While you were in school, yeah.
Yeah, because I knew that I wanted to do accounting and I wanted to do a chartered accountancy down the track.
Right.
And then I saw that a cadetship would be the best way, because BDO actually supports me throughout my CA as well. They
Right.
actually have their own classes of CA, and it just seemed more that it fit me. Even between cadetships, because UBS, I was actually going down the operations route for UBS because it didn't have an accounting role at UBS. But cadetship at BDO, it gave me what I wanted and what I looked for.
Right.
So even though UBS might have had a better pay and a better remuneration scale, but I felt that what I got what I wanted from BDO. So I think at the end, it depends on what you're aiming for in the long run, and not just if you get better pay or anything like that.
Sure. Any of the other panelists want to comment on co-op versus cadetship? Do you guys have any thoughts or any preferences or any perspective about that?
With the co-op stuff, I think this is a small financial thing. I don't know if it's still the case, but I definitely remember this was the case while I was in uni and I just graduated, so it shouldn't have by then.
Yeah.
But because it's a merit-based scholarship, you're actually $19K a year is all tax deductible. So you actually don't pay any tax on that. So you can actually, if you make up to another 18.2K, I think it is, none of that's taxed either. So if you end up doing co-op and working extra, you can actually be making up to $36,000 a year and not be taxed. So very small difference.
Yeah.
If you care about tax law stuff, it's just. But yeah, I think another thing about co-op is that if you're not a very good saver, it is sometimes a good option because you are just getting these regular payments of around 360, I think it is, 380 a week.
Right.
Oh, sorry, it'll be paid every fortnight, but you kind of get that money. So I know for me, when I did an exchange, and that money was really useful because I didn't have to save as much for my exchange, or I actually worked in Montreal for a while and I just had cover my expenses and I kept having co-op money come in. So depending on what your saving style is, that's another thing you might want to consider.
Very cool. Let's move on into the next question. What is the difference between appropriate information and unnecessary information when it comes to applying? What should go in and what doesn't really belong? Guy?
Ooh. I think the way you should look at it is that you're trying, the co-op people or cadetship people are looking at you and going, will this person be a good leader? Can I trust them to be a good fit? And can I trust them to stay on board? Because the reputation of co-op does depend on the quality of their candidates. Really, you end up costing the company in some cases a fair amount of money, especially in your first placement, because you use the resources of all the senior engineers or whoever you're working with. So they just want to see, is this person someone who will be good to represent us and will be good in the workforce? So basically anything that you're doing in your application should be really, really geared towards answering that. So if it doesn't do that, don't add it. So if you're about to say, oh, well, I was, just a school vice, school captain, whatever, that's kind of nice. But the important thing is, why is that? If you say, oh, well, I was school captain because people really liked me and I was really, really cool, doesn't really answer a lot of things about why they'd want you on board. Just doing things, just being in a bunch of bands, anyone can really do that. You should really emphasize, being in a band was cool and I did a lot of band work, but that proves that I have good time management skills, that I'm committed to learning an instrument, being in an orchestra, I learned about teamwork, I had to practice. Those are the things that are more important rather than just the thing itself. So you can really write about anything, but it's unnecessary if you're just listing things that you're doing. Talk about why and what they reflect about you. That's what I would say.
Which is actually a really important point. I think we keep coming back to that. This whole idea of reflect on the stuff that you've done. Don't say to yourself that you've done nothing in your life so far. Pick out the things that you have done and ask yourself, how have I showed leadership? What does it mean? How have I showed teamwork? How have I showed initiative? And maybe something will come out of that. And it's that's actually important in the interview or the application process itself. That's very cool. Next question, and I think I'll ask Andrew this question, would you put down everything you have done over your high school years? So the question here is, this is probably the very first time that a lot of high school students are applying for stuff in the outside world. And there's a question of, are you supposed to pack everything in, or should you be very, very selective with what you put in? What's the go here? What's your advice, Andrew?
Yeah, so for the co-op application, you actually have a strict word limit, meaning you probably won't be able to talk about everything you've ever done in high school. So instead, I recommend just picking the experiences or situations that really are fundamental to who you are and things that have actually made you see the world differently, and explaining those and using those situations. So I don't think it really matters what year you did something. It's more how this experience changed you and how that aligns to the application you're applying for.
Right. Very cool. Next question. To what extent must you have an understanding of your degree and its associated industry? So again, this kind of comes back to that whole bridge between high school and the real world thing. There's hundreds of degrees and dozens of universities, and the industry is a tricky thing to talk about and to kind of get a grasp on as well, especially for a high school student. So to what extent, should we research and really get to know it, especially before we walk into that interview? Victor, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. So it's actually very, very important. So when you apply to one of these programs, you need to communicate that you know what you're applying for and why you really want it. So I was looking through my application, and one of the questions that we all get asked is, after graduation, what sort of work or position do you imagine yourself in after graduation from university? And this is one of the questions that gets at this. You need to show your understanding of where this degree will lead you and what you might potentially do after studying this degree. So it is very important. Do your research. When I said earlier, only apply to one or two. Make sure you know those two courses very well. read up on the program outline available on the university's website, and also read about the associated careers that you can potentially have. So yes, it is very important.
Very cool. Next question. How stressful will it be to pursue a double degree and a cadetship at the same time? Can you still enjoy a social life outside of work and school? Now, before we jump into this question, let's kind of dissect some parts of this. Double degree cadetship. Now, double degree, just to clarify, let's say advanced science and commerce. An advanced science and commerce degree isn't necessarily double the amount of work as just an advanced science degree. So that's one thing that we should get out of the way. It just means that you're doing 2 degrees kind of at the same time, but there are some parts of the degree that are compromised when the 2 things mesh together, but you do spend more time at uni in total. So you might spend 4 or 5 years at uni as opposed to 3. So the double degree itself won't add pressure necessarily unless you are adding on a difficult degree to a simple degree. But the cadetship piece, I think, does add quite a workload to what would be normal university. So Bhagavathi, what are your thoughts on pursuing a double degree or a single degree, having university in general, and tagging on cadetship on top? Do you still get to enjoy a social life in your week?
Well, yeah, I do. We make sure to catch up with friends and everything, because at the end it's like you can't just work and study. You do need something else to balance it all out. But about the double degree and the cadetship at the same time, I think it is possible. I do have friends who are doing double degrees, especially one who's doing com law at UNSW and doing a cadetship with me at the same time. Because at the end, all it does is that right now I'm doing a 3-year degree in 4 years, and then that person's doing their 4-year degree in 5 years.
Right.
So but we're all still doing just 2 courses at one time. We aren't just doing anything more, but we do take courses in summer terms.
Right.
So we do summer courses, but it doesn't add on extra like stress or anything, because we're still only doing less than 2 courses and a cadetship at the same time.
So what does your week look like? What does your typical week look like when you're working and you're doing your uni at the same time?
Yeah. So so when I was working, how it went was I had Monday 8:30 to 5 full-time work. So I did full-time work on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Okay. Yeah.
And then on Wednesday, I actually got off work at 2 p.m.
Yep.
So it was a 3-hour break from work, and I went to uni at that time. And I put both of my tutorials back to back. So I did 2 tutorials from 5 to 7 something.
Right.
And then that's how it went. And then that's because I can't go for any of my lectures. I'll go for my lectures. I'll watch them online on the weekends or any of the weekdays if I'm feeling like it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's completely it's still doable. And then just like how anyone who's doing a full-time work has a social life, you can balance your social life around the full-time work as well.
For sure. And I think it comes down to a bit of a mindset thing. It's a question of, do you want to be part of this other large company right now, or do you want to pursue that later? And I think for a lot of people, especially for a lot of people in this current audience, you're thinking proactively. You're thinking about how do you set yourself up properly for your career, and you are ready to take on that work right now as opposed to later. Yeah. So I think you might have some university students who only have 10 hours of university that they attend. And that's kind of the extent of their commitments. And then you compare that to Bhagavathi, for example, who sounds like has more than 40, maybe more than 40 hours of commitment altogether. And when you combine both the degree and the cadetship, and she's watching all the lectures online, it's actually quite an amount. But at the end of the day, the question is, which career path do you actually want? At the end of the day, when you go through that experience with that company, what you end up with is going to be significantly different to simply doing a commerce degree at 10 hours per week, for example. So I think that's something to consider as well.
I also think that it's not just about social life, because I actually took part in a case competition at uni as well. So it's you can do all of these things because most of the things are very flexible, and you can do them on the weekends. You can do them after the normal work time.
Yeah.
So it's not just that you have to be at uni to do uni, be part of the societies and stuff, because I am part of the societies. I still take part in all of these events and everything. Right. So everything's possible because there are many other cadets. So it's not only just 2 of you out there who's struggling around. There's many more people. And then also it's just everyone's very helpful, and they're all willing to compromise for things. So it's fine.
Yeah, very cool. And I think before as well, I think all the panelists also spoke about people. So that's obviously a huge part of having a cadetship or a co-opship, where it's about kind of connecting with your peers as well as some older mentors as well. So I think there's a lot of this social interaction stuff happening in this context as well, and some of it might be just a bit different to what normal uni is, but nonetheless very, very important and very valuable, I think. Next question: what type of questions are most likely to be asked for an interview? Now, we already went through a bunch of this stuff over the past hour or so, but it'd be good to get a list of that so that we can kind of think about it really clearly. Guy, do you remember the types of questions that were asked during an interview?
So I can remember the type. Maybe Big Abathy can help me out with specifics.
Sure.
More recently. Yeah, I think a big thing with that is it's really important that you do some research over your companies. But they will ask you. The best thing to do is actually to be thinking about, as in you interviewing them as well. Like, hey, why do I want to work for you?
Yeah.
Like, why should I? Why should I be at your company? So, if you have a question for, say you're at a marketing firm, like, well, why, how do you as a firm deal with these issues? It can be really nice to really differentiate yourself. That's more a question you ask them, because they will ask you if you have any questions for them.
Right.
Like you said, I think that they will ask you things about, basically they'll generally be trying to sort of cross-reference with your application, just checking that you're legit, you're not lying about anything. So they'll ask very similar questions, but what you did in certain scenarios. Basically, like, it's very similar stuff. And ideally you can actually just have this, like, either the same stories or even new ones with different experiences. Kind of shows you more diverse. That's all I do remember happening. Maybe Big Abathy can kind of help out with the specifics.
Anyone else remember any of the, maybe Bhagavathi might remember, do you remember any of the interview questions that you were asked so we can share it with the audience?
Yeah, I remember one very specifically, and that was because I went for audit. It was how would I like get trust or maintain trust with like people.
Okay, so before you jump into that, just so to give a bit of context to everyone, because you've used the word audit again and again and again, and I wonder if everyone in the audience knows what that is. Now, we're talking from an accounting perspective. What exactly is an audit? Give a really quick summary of that so that we know what this question is really asking. What is an audit from a tax point of view?
It's just like looking over financial statements and making sure that all the finances are right. And if you find out any problems, like how we can like give them solutions and make it better.
Right. So
I think that is like a very overview.
Right. So you actually review the financials of some other company, and
of corporations and of like businesses.
Right. So your client would be whatever other company who wants their financials to be reviewed, to be audited.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And then if you're a public company, you have to get them audited.
Right. Okay, cool. So with that in mind, what was the question that they asked you?
So one of them they asked was, how do I maintain trust with people on relationships? Because audit is a very like client-based, customer-based role, and it's how I can maintain trust. So I remember how I did this was I basically broke that down into 3 things, and I was like, well, you can like I showed it with all 3 of my experiences. So one of them was with McDonald's, and I was like, that's a different kind of like relationship I form with a different kind of trust, because it's with a customer and it's with people I work with.
Yeah.
And that will be different as to when I'm working as Yaka. So I co-founded an organization with 2 of my friends called Yaka through Generation Entrepreneurs Incubator in year 11. So I was like, well, if I'm going for Yaka, it will be a different kind of trust and relationship I'm forming with people, because I want them to like believe in what we do, believe in our same like mission and like all of that. And then I was like, well, that's different as to when I'm the vice captain at school, because then it's a different kind of trust and a different kind of relationship I'm forming with my peers as well as my teachers. So I think it was like more like breaking it down and showing how you can do the same. Like you can still form relationship, but different kind of relationships with different positions that you've held or you hold. And then I think that was one of the questions I remember. Another one was like, why audit? And then of course they always had the questions like, do you have any questions for us at the end?
You need to have a list prepared for that.
Oh yeah, yes we do.
Yeah. Now you mentioned trust. This whole thing was about trust. Was that a question that you like in any way, shape or form anticipated or had prepared an answer for, or were you really put on the spot with that question?
So I knew that audit would be a customer-based role or a client-based role. So these are questions like relationships, and these are questions that can be in your like radar, like you might know that they might pop up. Because I do remember I had my second UPS interview and the video interview in the same week.
Right.
So I was like, I just came out of one of the interviews and I was like, yeah, like they're probably gonna ask some of the same questions.
Right.
And they also like went back to my video interview and my written assessment. So they picked up on things from there as well. So it's like you can guess some of the questions, but some of them they just catch you off guard.
Yeah, right. And again, just to remind the audience again about your resume, be honest and have a very, very thorough understanding of your own resume, because it sounds like this has come up again and again and again over the past hour. It is going to get picked apart. So you need to have those stories. You need to have it all worked out. You need to have that down pat. Next question, how should we prepare for interviews? And this is kind of touching on what we just spoke about just then. How do you keep calm before interviews and channel your thoughts clearly in an interview situation? So this interview situation is probably going to be a bit of a one of a kind for a lot of people, I think, for a lot of high school students moving into this kind of role. It's the first time they've been in this situation before. A lot of people are going to feel nervous. I think most people will feel nervous. So how do you prepare for this? How do you prepare for interviews in general? Anyone can fire away with this one?
Yeah. I guess I can kind of start with, I actually got some really bad advice before so I did my UTS interview and I did really, really well in that. Like really like smashed out the park, which is awesome. And then I was feeling very confident for the UTS, for UNSW one, but I didn't want to psych myself out too much. And then they did like a session for us with this lady who came in and kind of taught us about the interview prep. And she's like, don't be too confident. And I really took that to heart and then really not confident in my interview. It's so hard not to be too confident that it really shook me up and it wasn't good advice. So I would say don't be cocky.
Yeah.
Be confident. So don't be like, oh, I've got this in the bag. This is easy. Be confident. Like I think you should, a lot of people, especially people who are really deserving and smart and intelligent, who really should be in these positions, oftentimes doubt that. I knew that throughout the entirety of my process applying, I really didn't think I would get in. I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to get the ATAR for it. No way I'm going to be able to get in. No way they'll select me for my things. And I think people who do operate on, a lot of people I know in Co-op were also in a similar position. And if it wasn't for the fact I just forced myself to apply, gotten in. So I think people, no matter what level you're at, whatever level you think you're at, just be confident and trust that you'll be good enough. Because that's really not for you to decide anyway. So just trust in yourself and you can and you will be able to get in. If you don't, it's also not your fault. Applying. So just have that sort of inner confidence of you do deserve to be there and you do deserve to be heard. I also would avoid relying too much on preparing for certain answers. That might be a bit different to what other people in the panel might say. I think I've
actually heard that before as well. I've actually heard of an application getting cut, getting rejected, and then the feedback was that your answers were too textbook. It was too perfect. It was too premeditated. I needed a person, not a robot type of feedback was what they got. And
that's the thing. I think with HSC, you kind of own this thing of like, I don't know if they've changed the system now, but it's just a lot of just like remembering essays, remembering quotes. It's a lot of just doing things the right way.
Sure.
This is basically the idea of the interviews. They want to, like, they have your ATAR to know you're smart. They don't really or to know that you're capable. They get your marks. That's fine.
Yeah.
I think the point of the interview is to check who you are as a person.
Yeah.
You can't really prepare that. Maybe I would brush up on your experiences so you can have experiences to sort of rely on. So maybe you did a extracurricular thing, maybe just write those out and practice maybe using those as evidence. If you want to do some practice, be like, okay, well, I dealt with this difficult scenario when I was in the Frisbee team and I did this. That would be it. Otherwise, just trust you deserve to be there.
Yeah.
Sleep well, eat well.
Yeah. And I think, one final point in that, just to summarize all of that, I think that a lot of us feel nervous going into an interview because we feel like we have something to prove, which, I guess maybe technically is in some ways true, but ultimately one of the big things that they're looking for in an interview is this whole question of, is this someone I want on my team? And it's as simple as that. which isn't really a question of your technical ability or anything like that. It's just a question of almost just how personable you are. Are you the kind of person that I would want to sit across a table from and have coffee with while we discuss work? And the reason why that's so important is because in a lot of these companies, people working full-time are working, 40 to 80 hours per week, and they want to work with people that they're happy to do that with. And that's just the simple raw truth of it. So I think let that thought comfort you. If you're feeling nervous, remember, they're just looking for a person. You don't need to answer their questions perfectly, but you do need to be personable. You need to be someone that they would emotionally want to connect with. So maybe keep that in mind. And all of us, I think, in the audience have that. So channel that, I think, to calm yourself.
I think to also notice on that, sorry, just quickly on, is that there is an insane diversity of people in the co-op program. Some people I know who did almost no extracurriculars and were really, really well in the HSC. Some people who didn't really do very well in the HSC, but had a lot of extracurriculars and diversity and stuff. And people, the only thing that is consistent is everyone there is really, really nice.
Right.
Everyone's really personable, everyone you could talk to and do all that stuff. There's no one way to be a co-op. There really isn't. It's not like you have to have like a million extracurriculars. No, you have to just like have a 99 ATAR.
Right.
That's nice, but the main thing is you have to be a good leadership material person, and that's
right. Very cool. Now I might skip this one. This one's I think Bhagavathi covered a bunch of this, but we'll come back to this if we have time at the end. So we'll jump to the next question. Co-op, do I get to choose which company to sponsor me during the program? Guy, did you want to have a go at this one?
Yeah, sure.
Do you remember?
Yeah, I do remember. It does depend on what program you do and what happens. I know I did computer science, and we had computer science and software engineering. They kind of were able to discuss amongst themselves, and because we were quite a small cohort, I think there was like 6 computer science people.
Yeah.
We were able to actually go to our co-op organizer and say, to sponsor, you can't decide who sponsors you. They all sponsor you. You can, in some cases, decide which companies you want to go to.
Okay.
So me and all the other co-op people from my degree sat together and we said, okay, well, I want to do Atlassian. I want to do this company. I don't want to do Westpac. We kind of wrote them up, and then we, amongst ourselves, figured out which 3 companies we wanted to go to with compromises here and there, and then presented them. I do also know that there are certain degrees within the co-op where they don't get that option, and it's just picked for them.
Right.
Victor, was that the case for BIS and CIS?
For BIS, CIS, you get a preference, and ultimately it's up to them, but you do get to list your preferences.
Okay, very cool. Now, I have a bunch of other questions here from the group, but we're also running a little bit behind on schedule. So I thought what I'd do is actually open up questions from people on the chat. So let me just move across, see if I can jump back into Zoom. Stop this sharing. And let me just open up the chat. Now, if anyone has questions, and I think we already have one. From Dan to everyone, what is the difference between BIS and CIS co-op? Which companies are the sponsors for BIS and CIS? Victor, did you want to have a shot at this one?
Sure, and then I can let Andrew add on, because I chose the CIS co-op and Andrew did the BIS co-op.
Also, for anyone who doesn't know what those acronyms stand for, what do these things mean, BIS and CIS?
Right, yeah, definitely. So BIS stands for Business Information Systems, and CIS stands for Commerce Information Systems. Now, very, very confusing. But Commerce Information System is a commerce degree, so it's actually a business degree, and you do a major in information systems. Whereas Business Information Systems, BIS, is an information systems degree with a bit of a focus on business.
Right.
So they do a full information systems degree. It's more technical and more IT focused, whereas CIS is actually a business degree. So we have around half the units of tech related subjects compared to BIS. Andrew, if you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so another, I guess, small point is the BIS degree, you graduate with a Bachelor of Information Systems, whereas a CIS degree, you actually graduate with a Bachelor of Commerce, but with a major, I think, in Information Systems. And in terms of the companies that sponsor it, it actually changes every year. So it's probably easier just to hop on the website and see which companies actually do it, because pretty much a company will just decide each year whether they're taking BIS or CIS cohort intake from a co-op scholarship.
Right. Cool. Next question, Aryan. Bhagavathi, it's for you. What were the extracurriculars that you think were defining factors in your acceptance of your cadetship? Which ones? So you kind of mentioned McDonald's. So McDonald's is that. So you worked at McDonald's for a while, and you had a team leader. I actually remember this because I ran into you at McDonald's. I was a customer, and I remember you being on the other side.
It was in the middle of trials, and you were like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, I was like, "What is going on right now?" I remember that very well. So what else besides your team leader position in McDonald's? Was there anything else that you feel was big, or was that the big one?
I actually co-founded an organization called Yaka in year 11. So that would have been one of them. And also, and then I was also vice captain at Chathar High. Right. And all this, I've only been in Australia for 4 years. I moved from Dubai here. Yeah, right. So they were like, oh, you did all this in like 3 years, and like you moved and everything. So yeah. But I think it was more like just taking my weaknesses and showing them as a strength. As in, I didn't do math, so I did 2 units, and then by the time my interview came around, I actually dropped math from HSC, and they were like, you're here for an accounting cadetship, and you didn't do math. What's this? So I was like, well, it's not that I'm bad at math, it's that I'm better at other things than math. So I was like, I wanted to focus on the other things and make sure I get a good like 8 rather than do that. So I think it's just like making your insecurities or like your weaknesses and turning them into strengths and showing that you can actually do that.
Right.
So I think that would be one of them.
Yeah. From John, what is the UBS psychometric test about?
It's just like an aptitude test. So if you search up aptitude tests on Google, you can actually do free like tests before. Okay. So I did a lot of them. So there's actually one of them that actually gives you 2 tests that you could do, like full length tests for free. Right. So I did them, and then I just did that. So yeah, it was almost the same. So
really?
Just do a couple of them, and then you'll get into the headspace to do.
So you can literally Google this thing, and you can actually run this online.
And it's almost the same.
Okay. Wow. Very cool. For Mikhail, any specific advice for actuarial co-ops specifically? Does anyone have any thoughts about this? That might be outside of the stuff that we've done. Do you guys have any friends or anyone who might have done that?
Yeah, I can share some. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, some very general thoughts. So actuarial co-ops, from my current understanding and from my friends in the program, they do look at the ATAR slightly more than the other programs, because actuarial studies is a very hard degree. In particular, they look more at mathematics. So if you can highlight that you're doing really well in mathematics and it's an area that you're interested in, then I think it will give you an edge. And also business as well. So think of actuarial studies as the intersection of maths and finance. If you can show a bit of that, then I think it will go a long way.
Okay, very cool.
Guy, if you have anything else to add?
Anything to add to that?
Nothing specific for actuarial. I was wondering, want to get some clarification. It's all good.
Cool. From Jay, are there any cadetships for engineering, or are they mostly business related? So we've been talking about a lot of business stuff. Are there engineering cadetships as well?
I actually have no clue because I've never looked into it personally, but if there might be.
So I know the answer. I do know the answer to the question, and I also have maybe you guys would have friends that we can go into more detail on. But the simple answer is yes. But I think it does also change from year to year. So I've definitely heard of cadetships that are linked with, I think, Sydney Water a bunch of years back. I don't know if that's still on, but there was, I think there were there was some sort of engineering that was linked with Sydney Water, and there's also software engineers. Software engineering is very similar to computer science, but I think that was the thing that was on the table as well. And I think someone I wasn't sure if that was a cadetship or a co-op trip, but that was with Atlassian. That might be a co-op, right, Guy?
Yeah. I mean, again, the cadetships you wouldn't find through the university, you find through the companies themselves.
Yeah, right. So there are engineering ones, but it's through the company. So you'd have to maybe ask some older years whether they've heard of them. But I do believe that a bunch of years back, Sydney Water did something like this. Next question. This year, there we go. They've actually answered. This year, there's no engineering cadetships, I believe. But they're not too sure either. Anyone else with questions? You can open up the chat and actually type it away. While we wait for more questions, I might go on to some of the other questions that were submitted to us previously. Now, one of the questions here is something that we kind of touched on before, but let's kind of come back to this. It's this question of how well do you have to perform in the HSC itself? So I think there's going to be some people in the audience, you know, it depends on kind of how high school has treated you over the past 6 years. Some of us are going to smash the HSC, some of us are not. There's still time left, so you should be preparing thoroughly. But how well do you have to perform in the HSC itself? Now you don't have to, obviously you don't have to reflect on your own personal ATAR or anything like that, but you probably know friends who got into cadetships and co-ops as well. So, you know, how sensitive are they to this? Does it have to be a 99 plus ATAR? Does it have to be close? What's everyone's thoughts?
I can start first. So there's a hard cutoff for co-op, and it's 96, or the ATAR cutoff of the degree you're applying to. Right. So in the case of commerce, I believe it's 96.3, at least back in my year. So you must at least get a 96.3 ATAR. Right. Now, your ATAR doesn't actually come out until after you apply for it and after you graduate. So they look at your school marks. So in your application process, in this thing that you submit, you actually need to list your current grades and your rank in the school for each subject. And for me personally, I wasn't that great. I wasn't a great student until I joined Project and took math classes here. And I was actually a bit worried that this might be a limiting factor. But regardless, I still applied, and they did recognize that Waltham Hills is quite a strong school academically. So in the end, I did get through, but my grades were a little bit below average across most of my subjects. And I was also in the bottom math class at school as well, but that didn't limit me as long as I got an ATAR above 96.3.
Anyone else have any thoughts on that? Do you find that, so, you know, for example, if I was to talk to some of our tutors, or a lot of our tutors are like, they do law at UCIT or UNSW, and a lot of their friends obviously have an ATAR of a particular type, right? Do you find that with co-op and cadetship as well, or is it a bit more diverse? You kind of have a wide range of ATAR and academic performance.
It generally is above, at least for co-op.
Right.
They're a pretty strong cutoff on that 96. That being said, the only bonus points that do apply, so not like, you know, in regular for your degree and stuff, you can get bonus points for all kinds of things. Yep. None of those apply with the exception of EAS points. So that's the Educational Access Scheme. So if you've had any kind of difficulty hitting you during the HSC, you know, you can apply for that. Yep. I had a really tough time during my HSC, and I actually did, because it did actually impact my results and how I performed. And I am really glad I did that. So anyone who is going through any kinds of like personal matters or anything, do apply for those, because I actually didn't hit the cutoff. Right. I was able to get in because of that. And I know a few other people who did go through that, and a lot of people who are in these scenarios who should apply don't. So a lot of the time, if you kind of say it out loud and it sounds, you know, you've had some difficulty, and even if you don't really believe that you deserve it, apply. You know, most of the time you do, and you really should get that support if you can.
Right, right. And Arian's kind of asking a follow-up question. I'll come back to Sparsh's question as well. But Arian's question following on from that, will you be viewed more favorably if you do end up with a higher ATAR than other applicants, do you think? Or is this kind of like a balancing exercise between like academic performance and your extracurriculars, and it's kind of the sum of all this stuff?
I'm just going to go with it, just for the cadetships at least, just because for the BDO cadetship, the only requirement they had was that I will be able to do a degree that allows for a chartered accountancy postgrad.
Right.
And they didn't care which uni, nothing. So it just has to be in Sydney. So in my cohort, that's actually from Macquarie, from like UNSW, there's UCIT, there's UTS, there's students from every uni like possible who are just doing a course that's eligible for the CA. So, and then we actually get our offers before we even sit our HSC. So we actually sign the contract before we sit the HSC. Right. So they just want to make sure that you are able to get into one degree that allows you to do a chartered accountancy.
Okay.
So it's not actually an ATAR requirement for that.
Yeah, okay. That's very interesting. Last two questions before we wrap up. By Sparsh, second last question from Sparsh. Is there any sort of early entry for co-op or cadetships? Does anyone know about anything like that? But I think the way that it works is that there's simply a cutoff, a deadline, sorry, and you simply submit before then. Is that true, or is there some sort of early entry situation as well?
Not for co-ops, at least.
Not for co-op, no.
Bhagavathi, for cadetships?
There's nothing really called an early entry, because it's like the application goes through and you just like I got my contract before I even started my HSA, but that's how it happened for everyone else who applied at the same time. So it's not an early entry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think this is actually related to that. Tram's asked a question for the UBS cadetship. When do you when do they notify you if you got accepted to have an interview or not? Do you know the answer to that, Bhagavathi?
I can go and check through my emails and come back and give you like an actual timeline.
Sure.
But before I'll just say, I think so I had my competency test in May and my first interview in June, and then I had my second interview in September.
Right.
So like it's gonna take time.
Yeah. Okay. And last question before I wrap it all up. And everyone hold the line at the end, because I do want to share a link with you just to make sure that everyone's given us your email addresses so that we can send you a recording of this, especially for that really early stuff. We went through a lot of discussion here, and we answered a bunch of questions, which was easy to follow, but there was a lot of advice that was given by Victor and Bhagavathi from the very beginning using individual presentations. There's a lot of stuff there. I think you really need to replay that, stop and start that stuff and write notes and apply that directly. So don't walk away just yet. But last question, in a cadetship, do you still work through university holidays? This is a really big important question. So university students usually, they usually get their break, their summer break, I don't know, like December, November, something like that. Yeah. And they get about 2 or 3 months off, right? That's a typical, that's that uni life, right? How is it for you?
Okay, so during the term, I actually get up to 5 hours of leave from work to go to uni. So that's my 3 hours I take on Wednesdays. And then I actually get paid for that 3 hours as well. So I get paid for a full week anyway. And then I can take up to 5 hours leave to go to uni. Okay. But then even during exam period, you work the entire exam period. You get 2 days off, one on the day of the exam and one before the day of the exam.
Wow.
And then you work every other day in your exam period. You also work full time throughout every holiday. So even during break.
Correct answer to that question.
But then you actually do get a 3-week break over the December-Jan holiday. So that's the only like actual break. And then because it's a full-time job, you have like accumulated like yearly leave, like annual leave. You can use that up.
Okay, very cool. Okay, let's kind of, I'll try and wrap this up very quickly here, and I'll share the link as well so that we can send all of you a recording of this. Just want to say a huge thank you to Victor, Bhagavathi, Guy, and Andrew for taking time out of your week to sit here and share experiences and share your thoughts. It's been really helpful. When we send the recording, everyone please do go back to those initial presentations and vote. There was a lot of information there. Please unpack it. For project students that are in this chat, Bhagavathi has been kind enough to suggest that she'd like to, or she's happy to review your applications as well. So we'll try and organize that through our Slack. So Bhagavathi will be on Slack, so you can actually Slack her your application and she'll give you feedback. You probably have a lot more questions that you have, so you can ask those questions directly on Slack. She's an expert. All these guys are ex-project students, so she's already there. She's already on that Slack. So
I'm already in there.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Bhagavathi, for that support as well.
Okay.
For everyone who's not a project student, to give you a quick update on what's happening right now, we are just about, the way that we're dealing with the HSC syllabus, we're just about near the end of the syllabus for all of our Year 12 courses, and we're just about to start what we call the LEAP program, which is a trial examinations prep program. So we put our students through a weekly HSC mock exam that we've written. We review it, we mark it, and then we go through corrections with each individual student in tutorials, while also reviewing it as a group in class. So that's what's happening there. All of that begins at the end of this term. So anyone who is not a project already, if you want a trial project, the 3-week trial applications are open. So you can jump onto our website, projectacademy.com.au, to do that. In the chat, I'm just about to share with you, a link. Solomon West asked the question, when will we be back for classes? So at the moment, all of the project is actually online because of the current situation, but we're actually transitioning back starting from Monday, slowly. So tutorials are coming back, and then classes to follow when the government kind of allows us. So we're almost there, but not just there yet. But tutorials are going to be returning to campus from next Monday, which is very exciting. I'm sending a link to a Google form. You guys, if you have already put your email address in, that's great. We're going to email you a link to this video. If you haven't already done that, please do throw your email address in there. And that just about brings us to the end. Thank you so much to everyone who jumped on this call. I'm really excited to see the number of people that clicked interesting and the number of people who showed up as well. I think it's really great to see high school students being very proactive about this part of their life. It's this weird thing where like the high school model is based on nothing but examinations, and you've spent 12 years just grinding away at content and memorizing stuff and answering multiple choice questions. And then all of a sudden at the end of it all, they're like, are you now ready to walk into these giant organizations and, speak with different clients and have these meetings and do stuff that you've never really done before, have had any experience in? The Co-op programs, the Co-op scholarships and the Cadetships programs, these things are a really great bridge to upskill you to be really prepared for that. And what I find really interesting is that when you finish your degree, 4 or 5 years in, for those who don't go through the Co-op and don't go through the cadetship programs, they are competing against others who did when it comes to jumping into the next job. And what's really interesting is that for a lot of employers, what's more powerful than having a high distinction average at uni is having 4 years of experience at their competitor's company. That's just the raw truth of it. And that's just the way that the real world works. So I'm really excited to see so many people show interest. Please do download the video when we share it with you, go back and dissect that, and good luck to everyone for their applications. Thank you again for coming. Catch you later, guys.
Thanks for having us.